Most walking advice for people over 50 lands somewhere between too vague and too intense. Walk more. Walk faster. Get your heart rate up. What rarely gets mentioned is that the shape of the walk may matter more than people realize. A method developed by Japanese researchers does exactly that, alternating 3 minutes of brisker walking with 3 minutes of easier walking. Simple to do, easier to sustain, and more interesting than just walking at one flat pace. That's what we're covering today. So here's what the method actually looks like. You walk at a brisker pace for 3 minutes. Not fast, just a little more purposeful than your usual walk, enough that you notice the difference. Then you slow down for 3 minutes and walk at a pace that feels easier and more comfortable. Then you pick it up again. That cycle repeats, usually for about 30 minutes in total. That's the basic structure. In most cases, it works out to about 5 rounds, with a few easy minutes at the beginning or end if you want a gentler start or finish. You can do it outside, around your neighborhood, on a trail, or on a treadmill. Nothing special is required, just a simple way to keep track of the time. Together, it becomes one continuous walk that simply changes rhythm as it goes, which raises the obvious question: why does a pattern this simple seem to matter at all? Part of what makes this method stand out is that most walking advice stops just short of being useful. Walk more, get your steps in, stay active. But once the walk begins, most people just find a pace that feels natural and stay there. This method gives the walk a clearer shape. There's a pace to move into and a pace to ease back from, and you alternate between the two. That makes the walk feel less vague, more directed, and often easier to come back to. And part of why people noticed it in the first place is that it wasn't just a catchy idea. In older adults, this kind of alternating walk was linked to better fitness and leg strength than walking at one steady pace. 3 minutes is also short enough that the brisker part doesn't feel overwhelming, and the easier part comes back soon enough that the whole walk feels more manageable. And that may matter even more after 50. It gives the walk just enough contrast to feel alive, but not so much that it starts to feel like a task. And that balance is part of why people respond to it. After 50, the problem usually isn't a lack of motivation, it's that a lot of movement either asks too much or explains too little. Very intense plans can feel hard to start, vague advice leaves too much open, and a lot of exercise content is made for people who already have a routine, which isn't especially helpful if you're still trying to build one. What makes this method feel different is that it sits in a more manageable middle. It has enough structure to feel purposeful, but not so much that it becomes another thing to get right. You're not chasing numbers or trying to prove anything. You're just walking with a rhythm. And for a lot of people, that matters more than it sounds. Because once movement starts to feel too technical, too demanding, or too easy to get wrong, it usually stops being something you return to willingly. And in real life, that rhythm tends to feel even simpler than it sounds. In real life, brisker just means walking with a little more intention. Your arms may move a bit more. Your breathing may pick up slightly. You're not rushing and you're not pushing hard. You're just moving at a pace that feels a little more active than usual. You could still talk, but it would feel a little less effortless, and easier means exactly what it sounds like. You let the pace drop back to whatever feels comfortable. You're not stopping. You're just walking at the speed you would naturally choose if no one were watching. You don't need to time this perfectly. A rough sense of 3 minutes is enough. Most people use a simple timer, glance at their phone, or just get a feel for when it's time to shift. A few seconds either way won't matter. No special gear, no ideal conditions. A flat road works. So does a hill, a treadmill, or the same block you've already walked 100 times. The point is simply to walk and let the rhythm do its job. And that quiet simplicity matters for another reason too. It changes how heavy the walk feels before you even begin. Something people rarely talk about is how much of the resistance to exercise happens before it even starts. Not because the body can't do it. Usually because the plan already feels like a lot. One long stretch of effort with no clear break in sight. This method changes that. You're not committing to 30 straight minutes of effort. You're only moving into the next 3 minutes. And because the easier phase is never far away, the whole walk tends to feel lighter from the start. The brisker part feels more manageable because you know it won't last long. And when the easier part arrives, it feels like part of the rhythm, not like backing off. That's one reason people often find this walk easier to begin and easier to come back to. Which is also why the most common mistake is making it harder than it needs to be. The most common mistake people make with this is turning the brisker part into too much. That's understandable. A lot of us are used to the idea that if effort doesn't feel obvious, it doesn't really count. So the brisker minutes become almost a jog. The breathing gets heavy, and by the end of the walk, the whole thing feels more like a workout than it was meant to. And when something feels harder than expected, it becomes much easier to skip the next day. The brisker part is not supposed to leave you winded. It's just supposed to feel a little more active than easy. That distinction matters, because the value of this method is not one impressive walk. It's being able to come back and do it again and again. So if the brisker sections feel a little too comfortable at first, that's fine. Starting lighter than you think you need to is not a mistake. It's usually the better way in. The easiest way to start is to do less than you think you should. If 30 minutes sounds like too much for a first attempt, try 3 rounds instead of 5. That gives you 18 minutes of the rhythm itself, with easy walking at the start and end if you want it. It's enough to feel the pace shift without finishing the walk already dreading the next one. Go out on a normal morning, at normal energy levels, on whatever route is convenient. Set a rough timer on your phone, or just count loosely. Do not try to make the first walk your best one. Try to make this your easiest walk to repeat. That's a much better target in the beginning than trying to prove you can handle the full version right away. What you're looking for is a version of this that feels easy enough to repeat. Not impressive, repeatable. Because a walk you do 3 times this week at a pace that feels almost too gentle is already doing more than a harder walk you talk yourself out of. The version worth keeping is the one that still feels possible tomorrow. That may be the real appeal of this idea. Not that it turns walking into something harder, but that it gives a simple walk just enough shape to make it easier to keep. And after 50, that often matters more than doing it perfectly. It matters more that you'll still want to do it tomorrow. If the work we do here at Healthier Horizons is helpful to you, there's a Buy Me a Coffee link here. It helps support the channel and keep this kind of content going. And if you want to stay with this a little longer, there's another video here on simple blue zone movement and easy longevity habits that builds on this one. And the newest video is here too.